Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you the worst books that I read in 2022. I love doing these kind of yearly wrap-ups and just kind of reflecting on all of the books that I've read and, the highs and lows of the reading year that was 2022. And so for these, I have 5 total. Usually I've gotten pretty good at kind of DNFing books that I'm not enjoying, and the ones that I do end up sticking with are ones that I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to review this on my channel, or I'm incorporating it in some type of, thing with my BookTube channel, so I kind of have to read it. So these were ones that had a 2-star or lower rating, and so conveniently there was 5 in here as well, so that makes for a nice, video to look back on some of these. And conveniently, I don't really have any of these books. I do have one, but I got rid of all these books because I did not like them, and there's no point for me. I want my shelves to reflect me as a reader, so I don't want to have books that I didn't really enjoy. Without further ado, let's get started. Starting up, we have the Lost Apothecary. This is a book that I read towards the end of 2022, and this book in particular had been on my shelf for a while, and I was really excited to dive in. It sounded like it had such a really interesting premise, it's like a dual storyline historical fiction-esque book. So the present day storyline is a girl is vacationing in London, and she ends up finding this small vial that has a weird symbol of a bear on it. So she is very determined, she's very intrigued by this vial that she finds, and so she ends up kind of researching it and finds that it somehow ties into what was called the Lost Apothecary. And we follow I think it takes place in the early 1800s or like 1700s of the person who was running this apothecary, which was designed to basically provide poisons for women to murder men that wronged them. And basically with that premise, you think it'd be like this amazing book that would blow you away, but it was probably like one of the worst books I've ever read. It was so bad. The past storyline was written in modern day dialogue where I couldn't distinguish between past and present in terms of the characters. You don't get enough time to really get to know them, and the transitions between the two narrations were very chalky and jumpy and didn't transition well. And then in another instance too, with the kind of modern day setting, the main character was so annoying, and just the instances of what she does were just very unbelievable. She is very baby obsessed in the beginning, and she's just, another thing too is she decides to apply to grad school, and within applying she finds out that she gets in the next day, which is just very unrealistic. And there's just a lot of unrealistic eye rolls in here, and if you look on Goodreads and just look specifically at 1-star reviews, you can get more in depth. But I could probably hate on this book for a long time, but it was just poorly written. It had an excellent premise but poor execution, and yeah, definitely one of the worst books and biggest disappointments of the year. Next up, we have the wildly popular TikTok book, The Atlas 6. And again, this is one that I've heard really there's very polarizing. So there's people who love it on the internet and there's people who hate it. I feel like the people that love it are very loud and kind of overshadow people who don't like it. So that's why I was like, it sounds interesting. So it's about this the Library of Alexandria if it were real, and these 6 people get recruited, and in that first year they have to train in order to become members of the Alexandrian Library Society. And one of the main things, this too had an interesting premise, and if it's taking place in the Library of Alexandria, you think you would have more. Sorry, this one light bulb keeps coming out and then comes back on, so we're just going to deal with it. But basically you would think that it would, you'd have more scenes that take place in the library, and I think there was maybe one. Do the readers really get to see how the library works and functions? No, it was just, I felt like from a setting, atmosphere, and having take place in this library, you think it would utilize that setting, but the author didn't. And the the characters in here are unbearable, and I think one of the themes or like tropes in dark academia is kind of they're unbearable characters, but you can still be interested in the plot and like what will happen to them. In this case, there really is no plot for 99% of the book. There's basically no plot, and the characters aren't intriguing enough to really be invested in the kind of other stuff that's going on, the character dynamics. They're just really unbearable. And in addition to, the writing style was very overly pretentious, and it just wasn't fun to read. And my boyfriend, luckily, he read the second book too. I was like, I'm on the fence, is the second book worth it to kind of get through this first book? And he said it's like, no, like it's not a well written series. It's just, I don't understand how it got all this hype from TikTok when it's not well written. The characters are unbearable and there's no plot. So I don't understand the hype for this one. It was just not fun. Next up, this is one that I'm very disappointed to put on here, and it is Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Over the summer, I became I like marathoned all of Taylor Jenkins Reid kind of more modern like stories in terms of like Daisy Jones and the Six, Seven Husbands, and Evelyn Hugo. Like, I loved those, and Malibu Rising was just okay. So I was really excited for this because I had like over the summer marathoned those 3 books, and so I was really excited because I knew we got kind of a preview of Carrie and Malibu Rising, and so I had really high expectations. And so basically the premise of this is we follow Carrie Soto, who is probably the world's best tennis player, and she ended up retiring. But when a newer kind of athlete ends up tying her record for most Grand Slam wins, she decides to come out of retirement and train to kind of, you know, show everyone that she is still the best. And so like that sounds like a really interesting premise. And what Taylor Jenkins Reid has done with like Daisy Jones and the Six or Evelyn Hugo is that she's able to create such a complex female character that even though they're flawed, you can't help but rooting for them. But in this case, I felt there were very little redeeming qualities to Carrie overall. She is very, like, I understand kind of that hyper competitiveness within professional athletes. Like, I think that is a very valid kind of character trait, but she's kind of harsh and abrasive and mean just for the sake of being like mean, essentially. And she's aware that she's being mean to people, and she'll have like an internal monologue being like, oh, that was mean, I shouldn't have said that, but she doesn't care and she doesn't try to improve. So especially with like Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo, you get such a the characters that you see at the beginning are they have such a lot of character evolution to what we see at the end. And for Carrie Soto, there was no character development. She like stayed stationary. She had no change in her character. Like, I felt like she never really learned from this experience, and so I was a little bit disappointed with this one. And there were just a lot of very predictable plot points in here that I would just like really easy to figure out. I did really enjoy kind of the sports commentary in here in terms of how she was writing kind of like tennis matches into the book. I thought that was well done, but I think if you were to compare this to some of her more popular work that I think is really well done, this kind of just falls flat. Next up, I have an entire video dedicated to my experience reading this book. And again, it's another popular TikTok book, which I should have known, and it is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And this book was probably, I know I said the Lost Apothecary was probably one of the worst books I read, but From Blood to Ash really takes the cake of this one. I don't even like the premise. There really like is like she's like this like maiden who's supposed to be pure, and it was just very confusing, but she ends up falling in love with one of these guards in like a forbidden love situation. But it was basically a just horny version of Twilight is kind of how I would describe it. But there are just a lot of instances of the main character Poppy being just like overly naive, and there are issues of like not consenting to, you know, certain activities with, you know, other people. There's racism, there's like all these other issues in here that are kind of thrown throughout. And just the writing style, I've never hated a writing style And I've read the Atlas 6 and I hate that writing style, but I've never hated a writing style like Jennifer L. Armentrout. She used so many, I think they're the ... dots, and I like actually, like, if I see it in writing now, like, it gives me PTSD because that book, I kid you not, I looked at one page and 16 of those were used, and they're used in places that don't make sense. So I don't know how this book got past an editor. I don't know why people love this so much. Like, if you I get having like a guilty pleasure read. Like, Sarah J Maas is a guilty pleasure read for me, but I feel like they're well written compared to this. Like, I just was like smacking my head. Like, it was so bad. I hated it. It was just not well done. And yeah, just the writing in here, like, go check out my video if you want to know more, and it's making me mad thinking about this book. But my god, I have never hated in a book that much. And last one, this is kind of like a short story, and it is Signal Moon by Kate Quinn. This was like a free short story that came out over the summer, and it kind of ties in the past and present day storyline. So in modern day, this man is on a submarine, sorry, I'm trying to remember, is on a submarine, and he gets like this weird like radio signal from someone from the 1940s. And it was just really, like, I understand there's kind of like a time travel aspect in here that does not make sense, and they kind of have like a love relationship, and they kind of communicate with each other, and he's kind of motivating her that, you know, the war is worth fighting for, like, you know, England eventually will win, and she's kind of trying to convince him, like, that I'm gonna try to save your life. And it was just like, I don't know, it felt very unrealistic. And I understand there's like a magical aspect in here in terms of time travel, but it wasn't done in a way where I was like, I can see that happening. Like, I was just very confused throughout the whole thing, and it was too short for me to really get the chemistry between these two characters and understand really the impact that these two people in different time periods had on each other. Yeah, this one was a little bit disappointing because I do really like Kate Quinn, but this one just wasn't really intriguing for me. It was like a quick read, and it was fun because it was free, but like at the end of the day, like, it wasn't a good quality read. There just were a lot of issues with the plot in general, big plot holes, and just not enough time to really get to, you know, connect to these characters and find their kind of relationship believable. So this one was one that was definitely disappointing, but again, I still really love Kate Quinn, so this one, she has a lot of other books that I've enjoyed. This short story just wasn't really great. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your worst books were of 2022 and all that fun stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.